In the last video we produced a Hello World program, and we were showing that the build was successful. You might not have seen that in the last video. Down the very bottom left hand side there you can see build successful, and that's when I then get my output, Hello World. Now to stop the program you need to click this little red square at the top, and when I do that the program will stop, and you'll see now I've got no output on my emulator. In other words, the emulator it closes independently. Indeed, just for the sake of it, I will close it. I'll click this little cross up here, which will close the emulator, but there's no need to do that, and it's not a good idea because it takes a while for the emulator to warm up. But for the moment, just it's saving the state of the emulator, the AVD, and so you can see that they're both independent. What I'll do now is take a look at the two I pointed out to you before. The two main features of the program are the main activity, which is the Java file, which is showing on the right hand side here, and then the activity. Take a look at these tabs up here. They're a little bit sort of misleading in a way that it's the white colored tab there, which is the one which is showing, a little bit strange sometimes, but then we can look at the main activity as well. Now I'm going to just make that a bit bigger so you can see it better. And now the thing is that you can't actually make that bigger by default. I'm using the control key and the central mouse button, and the way to do that, and I suggest you do that before we go any further, is to go to the settings, file, settings, and then go to the editor, and then the settings for the editor, which are the general, I think. That's correct. Now look here, it says the change font size with zoom. That's the second one down. Change the font with zoom, so I'll make sure that's checked, and then we can click OK, and that makes it an awful lot easier for you to edit your program and actually see it. Now, as I mentioned, these are the two main files, the activity XML and the main activity. There's a little trick I can apply here. What I'll do is right click on that and choose split vertically the window. You don't need to do this, just for my demonstration. Split vertically, and you can see both of them at the same time, and then we might just close that one, and then we can see them at the same time, because these are the two main I keep emphasizing that these are the two main parts of your program. This is the Java file, and this is the XML file, and they're basically the two ways that we put stuff on screen. In particular, we've got here this onCreate, which is the thing which occurs when we first start up our program. So you can put code in there, and the other way of getting stuff on the screen is by means of this. Now you can recognize this as Hello World is what did appear on it. So what we'll do is, just for the sake of it, we'll just change it. You just change that how you wish, change it to something else, and then run our code once again, and eventually the emulator will appear with the output. Let's just focus on the XML for a while and how we got the Hello World into the emulator. Taking a look at it, we've got starting up the top, got Android X is mentioned here. Android X is a new library. You may see just Android appearing in the past, and so that's a more modern version. We need to talk about that and the implications of that. That can be a bit of a problem. Programming in Android Studio is not easy, and for two reasons really. One is this confusion about various libraries which are pertinent at any given time, and the other thing is that we're sort of programming from the inside out. You can't just sit down like in C# program and write a program just like that. You have to get Android Studio running as your environment, and you're more or less programming from the inside out, which is a bit disconcerting to start with, but you get used to it. So alongside that opening tag Android X, we've got just to the right of it, we've got a namespace, and you can see XMLNS means an XML namespace. There are three of them we've got at the moment: Android, App, and Tools. Now basically they are just for naming, so don't get it. We can make unique names, and we don't get any confusion from someone else having the same name. Say they had another layout width, and so to avoid confusion we have to label these names, and Android in this case is the, shall we say, the label. More particularly, it's the namespace. Now the that URL can or cannot mean anything, but you can sometimes go to those URLs and you'll find resources there, but by and large it's really just a way of providing a unique name. So that's the namespace. Now we're talking about the layout. It doesn't matter if you've got lines in the XML, by the way, and it's a bit tricky sometimes. Look at the XML. Here is your this combined with this is really, that's your opening tag, and this is your, down here you've got your closing tag as well. And basically you see that's we've got the this is another section of, we've got the tag of text view and opening tag. Well, while we're at it, that text view represents the text box which is placed in our basic program by default, and perhaps I should just show you that. So let me just close the Java file and take a look at now you see down the bottom here we've got design and text and these two tags. Now I better warn you that you go looking around for these sometimes and you won't find them, and the reason is you haven't got an activity, an XML I should say, opened up. Did I mention, by the way, that an activity means screen? So if you're looking at the output onto a screen, you're looking to the output onto an activity. You could also have a fragment, which is another way of representing the screen, but that's what an activity means, a screen full of stuff. So, but if I close that, you'll see obviously the tags down here disappear, but you might go rumbling around for them and saying, where on earth are they? So make sure you've got an XML file open before you can see any of that stuff. So I'll go, there's my text at the bottom here, and then there's my design. So you can see this is the actual text view that you've got at the moment. Now notice this constraint layout is useful as well. Text view, it just shows which one's which. You see all these zigzag lines, they represent the constraints, which I'm going to point out to you in a moment. That's a constraint is a way of constraining the object on the screen. But you could actually go up to here and put a button, drag a button onto the screen. In fact, that's what they might have done in the user text view. They might have actually dragged a text view onto that design view in the first place. I don't know. Or they might have written it from scratch. So you'll find that professionals really want to write their stuff from scratch here. I'm just going to make that a bit bigger, as I explained to you previously. So let's see if I can get the design showing at the same at the same time as the text. Let me try splitting the screen to do that. So I can go Window, and then I can go. You don't have to do this. It's just for my demonstration. I'm going to make sure the program's not running, by the way. So I should have done that. Stop the program, and you'll see my emulator output has disappeared, but that's still there. You could close it if you want to, but I won't bother. So let's see if I can split up the window. Well, let's see. It's not that window. It's here. If I right click onto my particular window and then say split vertically, there you are. I've got both of them. Now you see I can choose on the other one. I can choose the design phase, which is rather nice. And just make sure that not tucked away there, so that is actually visible as well. Now you can see my design appearing here. That's what we call at the moment, it's a blueprint view. If I can go up here and change, I've got here design and blueprint, and I could put them side by side as well, make it a bit bigger, but well, what's the difference? Not a great deal actually. You could just have one visible, but the blueprint is supposed to be a little bit clearer, but I'm not so sure. But I'll just click over here onto the very left of the screen where it says project, if you can just see that, and just reduce the project, make that a bit more visible for us. Now I think I only need one view, so I'll just go to that, and I'll use the blueprint view. That's fine, and I might make control middle button to scroll button to make that a bit bigger. Now, so what we're talking about here is the XML version of that design screen. So we've got here the layout here, layout now what we're talking about here, layout, match parent and so on. And just going back up the top, got a constraint layout, it says now. Basically that's when you get all these springy things appearing, a constraint layout. You can have a relative layout or a linear layout and so on. It's the container. Now the container that we're saying at the moment is to match the parent. So in other words, it's going to match the outside of the design view. Tools context equals main activity. As I understand it, that will link this file to the file I just showed you before, which is the program file. So it's the link between the XML and the actual code. And that's the thing you're going to find in general, that these things are quite like divorced, if you like, the two features, the code and the XML, they're divorced, but then you have a coupling between them. That's sort of a bit of a trendy way to be programming these days, and you have a loose coupling, so it makes it much more flexible in future if you want to couple to something else, for example. I'll explain more about that later. But for the moment, I've got a text view. Now, a text view represents that little thing which is saying hello new world. Now this is quite nice because you can actually, you might not be able to see it properly. Now I'm going to go to the XML and delete the hello world, and you'll see, you can just maybe see it, that the hello, it's become hello world and not hello new world. And incidentally, there's another way of doing that. If we click on it and take a look up here to the text attribute here, and I can put it back in, or I'll say make it so hello my world, and you'll see that's pretty cool, as they say. You can see it appear here in the design, but you can also make it appear in the XML. It's pretty amazing, really, that you've got three ways of doing visualizing the same thing. In fact, I can see a bit too many spaces. I'll go into the XML and modify it from there as well. You might like to give that a run just to see that the output will appear as such in the emulator. You could, if you now the constraints here, we've got these 4 constraints at the bottom. Basically, these 4 constraints belong to these 4 squiggly things on the right hand side. They are what holds it in place, if you like. It's quite a modern way to do it, shall we say. You might like to try and put something on your screen. For example, you might like to put a button on the screen, so you would therefore just drag it onto there. Now it might just it'll stay there for the moment. They have a tendency to fly off, these things. Now it looks like it's been constrained automatically. Well, not quite. It's actually, you'll find that it's got the horizontal constraints, but now the reason they've appeared automatically is that you've got this thing up here, you see, where it says auto connection to parent. Now if I were to have that off as now, then when I put a new thing on the design, you'll find that you won't get any constraints whatsoever. So that's like a bit of a starter, if you like, to put on your constraints. So I think what I would do at this stage is, on my button, I would then click up here. You might just see it somewhere there, a little wizard thing, infer constraint. So if I click that, you'll find that that should have a guess at what the constraint. So at the moment it's constraining that to that. So it's having, but we'll have more to say about that later. But more importantly for the moment is that you can see that we've got this XML. Look at that, it's being produced automatically, and it's put in those constraints that we've just, and you can see that change before your very eyes, really. And it's got an ID. Now that's quite important. It's been assigned an ID. Let's come back to that as well. But for the moment, I'm going to now show how we can we can alter our screen, our output, by using code. So it's an alternative way. Rather than using this XML to make things happen on the screen, we're going to use some code.